You like to think of yourself as a good person, kind, honest, decent. But then there's that moment. The flash of rage, the quiet jealousy, the cruel thought you never speak aloud. And you wonder, where did that come from? Carl Jung had an answer. He called it the shadow, the buried parts of ourselves we refuse to see, the desires we exile, the flaws we deny, the instincts we pretend don't belong to us, but they do. The shadow isn't just darkness, it's power, it's potential. It's the parts of you that once integrated give you spine, creativity, clarity, and strength. And when ignored, it rules you from the depths. This episode explores why confronting your shadow is not only necessary but liberating. We'll uncover why suppression leads to sabotage, why nice people sometimes break in violent ways, and how facing your darkness can lead to psychological wholeness. Through Jung's insights, real-world stories, and practical techniques, we'll learn that the goal isn't to defeat the shadow. It's to befriend it, because your greatest strength may just be hiding in the place you least want to look. The mind is a labyrinth. Let's walk its shadows together. You were not born in pieces. You were born whole, instinctual, emotional, curious. But as you grew, you were taught to divide. This is acceptable. That is not acceptable. Be polite. Don't be angry. Don't question authority. Good boys don't cry. Good girls don't raise their voices. So you hid what didn't earn approval. You masked what made others uncomfortable. You repressed what made you feel guilty, chaotic, or ashamed. Carl Jung called that buried terrain the shadow, the unconscious part of the psyche that holds the traits, feelings, and impulses we deny in ourselves. Not because they are inherently bad, but because they're inconvenient, uncomfortable, taboo. The shadow is not just anger and envy. It can be ambition, sexuality, confidence, competitiveness, assertiveness, independence. Even joy, when joy has been punished. It includes every part of you that was shamed, silenced, or starved. We do not get rid of these parts. We exile them. And what we exile does not disappear. It festers, it waits, and eventually, it acts. The shadow leaks through our actions in moments we least expect. A cruel joke that cuts too deep. An explosion of rage that surprises even ourselves. A moment of self-sabotage on the brink of success. This is the paradox of the unconscious. The more we suppress something, the more power it gains over us. And the more we pretend we are purely good, the more dangerous our darkness becomes. The kindest people often carry the sharpest shadows, because they've worked so hard to be nice, to be liked, to never cause harm, that they end up repressing every instinct that seems selfish, angry, or forceful. But repression is not healing. Repression is delay. The unacknowledged parts of the psyche don't vanish. They grow roots in your subconscious and bloom in your projections. Projection is one of the shadow's favorite tools. It's the psychological sleight of hand that lets us see in others what we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves. That liar you can't stand? Maybe your own truth is slippery. That arrogant coworker you mock? Perhaps you've buried your own desire to shine. That manipulative friend? Maybe they're mirroring a part of you that knows exactly how to get what it wants, but learned to do it in silence. Projection is not an indictment. It's a compass. It points to the parts of you calling out for integration. But this isn't just theory. It's biology. The psyche has a self-regulating function. Jung believed that the unconscious isn't just a dumping ground, it's intelligent. It holds what we're not ready to face, but also pushes us, over time, toward wholeness. Shadow material arises in dreams, in slips of the tongue, in art, in conflict. It insists on being seen. The ancient myths knew this. They told stories of gods with wrath and lust, of monsters born from disowned emotions. The Greeks didn't hide the dark. They dramatized it. They gave it names. They faced it in ritual. But modern culture prefers sterilization, clean narratives, heroes without flaws, success without struggle. In this, we are encouraged not to know ourselves, but to curate ourselves. And so the shadow grows. To understand the shadow is not to judge yourself. It is to meet yourself, to look in the mirror with honesty, not shame, to say, "This too is me." This is not an invitation to indulge every dark impulse. It's the opposite, because awareness is what gives you choice. You can't transform what you won't touch. You can't integrate what you won't name. So far, we've only opened the door, but already, you can feel the hum of truth beneath your skin. That pull towards something hidden, something ancient, something quietly alive inside you. The part of you that knows. What you fear in yourself may be the very thing that will set you free. If you're liking this video, please like and subscribe now. It helps the channel to grow. Thanks for your support. Repression is not silence. It's pressure, and pressure always finds a release. When we bury parts of ourselves, we don't destroy them. We simply force them underground, where they ferment in secrecy. And what festers in darkness doesn't disappear. It distorts. It mutates. It waits for its moment to emerge, not with grace but with violence. You've seen it. The devoted family man who suddenly explodes in rage. The spiritual teacher caught in scandal. The politician preaching morality while hiding corruption. These aren't accidents. They are symptoms. Beneath every public downfall, behind every inexplicable self-sabotage, there is a shadow that was ignored. A truth that was too dangerous to say aloud, so it said itself through action. Jung warned us, what you resist not only persists, but grows. The harder you push down what you fear in yourself, the more control it gains. This is the shadow's revenge. Because when we are unconscious of our darkness, we are at its mercy. We think we're in control when we are being controlled. We mistake our ego for our compass, unaware that the true navigator, the unconscious, is steering us through fear, shame, and unspoken wounds. Consider the phenomenon of exploding niceness. People raised to be good, polite, and harmless often carry unexpressed anger, frustration, and desire. They were rewarded for compliance, punished for defiance, so they learned to submit, to accommodate, to over-apologize. But this niceness is not kindness. It is fear. It is self-erasure dressed in social grace, and over time, it becomes unbearable. Then, one day, it snaps. A sarcastic comment turns cruel. A hidden resentment erupts. A breakdown blindsides everyone. The person who was always so nice suddenly becomes unrecognizable. But the truth is, they were always that person. They just didn't have permission to be whole. This is not a failure of morality. It's a failure of integration. A system that rewards performance over authenticity inevitably breeds fracture. We are taught to admire the polished persona, the perfect influencer, the unshakable leader. But these are masks. And behind every mask is a tension. That tension shows up as anxiety, as imposter syndrome, as addiction, as a quiet dread before sleep, as a gnawing sense that something is off, but you can't name it. That off feeling is the cost of suppression. It's the part of you that knows you're not showing the whole truth, not to the world and not to yourself. When we suppress, we split. And when we split, we suffer. A person at war with themselves cannot live in peace. They cannot trust their own desires, because desire has become dangerous. They cannot speak their truth, because truth has become a threat. So they shrink, or they lie, or they self-medicate. And eventually, the disowned parts of the psyche rebel. They sabotage your relationships. They interfere with your goals. They haunt your dreams. Because what is not integrated will always find a way to be seen. But let's be clear, this is not just a personal issue, it's cultural. Our society encourages the fragmentation of self. It tells men to suppress tenderness. It tells women to suppress anger. It tells everyone to suppress doubt, fear, complexity. We are taught to be brands, not beings. So the shadow doesn't just live in you. It lives in institutions, in families, in ideologies. Whole systems are built to avoid looking at the parts they fear. But what is repressed in the collective becomes dangerous in the extreme. History shows us this. When a nation denies its shadow, it projects it outward. And projection on a mass scale becomes persecution, propaganda, war. This is why the shadow matters. Not just for inner peace, but for outer sanity. Because the more fragmented we become, the more unstable the world becomes. And the only way back to balance is through brave, brutal honesty, starting with ourselves. So the question is not, do I have a shadow? You do. The real question is, am I willing to see it before it chooses to be seen for me? What does this question stir in you? Share your reflections in the comments. Your perspective might help someone else face their own shadow. If the shadow is the problem, then shadow work is the path. But let's make something clear. This is not an intellectual exercise. It's not about understanding your darkness in theory. It's about meeting it, naming it, listening to it, and most of all, making space for it in the light. Shadow work is not self-help. It is self-confrontation. It asks you to stop pretending, to stop dressing up your wounds as wisdom, to stop blaming the world for patterns you repeat. It asks you to ask yourself, what part of me have I tried to bury alive? You begin not with judgment, but with curiosity. Notice what triggers you in others. What do you hate most? What disgusts you? What would you never want to be seen as? That is the scent trail of your shadow. Because often, the qualities you most reject in others are the ones you've most deeply repressed in yourself. Maybe you're furious at people who are arrogant because you've disowned your own desire to be seen. Maybe you despise liars because you've twisted your truth so long you don't recognize it anymore. Maybe you mock the ambitious because your own hunger scares you. This isn't about becoming those things. It's about owning them. It's about recognizing that every trait has a light and a dark. That ambition can become purpose. That anger can become boundaries. That pride can become self-respect. Shadow work is the art of alchemy. You don't discard your darkness. You transmute it. Start with journaling, not to record your life, but to dissect it. What patterns repeat? What do you avoid? What role do you always play? And what role are you afraid to play? Dreams are also rich with shadow. Jung believed the unconscious speaks in symbols. Nightmares often contain what you are refusing to face in waking life. Monsters, accidents, lost control. They're not punishments, they're messages. And then there is active imagination, one of Jung's most powerful tools. You speak directly to parts of yourself you've exiled. You let them speak back. You write the dialogue between the mask and the monster, between the ego and the instinct. And in that conversation, integration begins. But this is not easy. It is not tidy. It is not linear. Sometimes what you find in the shadow disgusts you. Sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it shatters the image you've built for yourself. And that's the point. You are not here to be palatable. You are here to be whole. Wholeness does not mean perfection. It means nothing is left out. Wholeness means you can sit with your jealousy without letting it drive you. It means you can acknowledge your desire for control without needing to dominate. It means you can feel anger and not collapse into shame. This is what Jung meant by individuation, the process of becoming an integrated, conscious self. It is not about becoming someone new. It is about becoming who you always were before the world taught you to split. The goal is not to be pure. It's to be real, to be dangerous, but disciplined, to be soft, but not spineless, to carry your chaos like a sword you know how to wield. Because a person who knows their shadow cannot be manipulated by it. They are not easily triggered. They don't need to prove their goodness. They don't wear masks to be loved. They are grounded, complex, clear, and most of all, free. Look closely at the people you admire, the ones with charisma, with presence, with influence. They are not unscarred. They have simply made peace with their scars. They have walked through their own darkness and returned with a deeper light. True power is not in how you perform. It's in how you reconcile your contradictions, in how you own your fire without letting it consume you, in how you stand in the middle of your complexity and do not flinch. Shadow work does not make you perfect. It makes you honest. And in a world addicted to illusion, that honesty is a kind of revolution. To integrate the shadow is to rewrite your relationship with power. Not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that roots you so deeply in yourself that you can no longer be moved by superficial praise or shallow rejection. You stop performing. You start living. Not as a curated persona, but as a whole, complex, truthful being. But integration is not an event, it's a process. One that requires consistency, reflection, and courage. Because every time you meet a new edge of yourself, another piece of shame, fear, desire, you're invited to deepen the work. You begin to realize that the shadow is not a flaw in your system. It is the system. And wholeness doesn't come from eliminating the dark. It comes from dancing with it. Look at the great creators, the bold thinkers, the spiritual outliers. Many of them walked with their shadow as an ally. Fyodor Dostoevsky, Russian novelist and short story writer, didn't hide from suffering. He used it as ink. Nina Simone, American singer, songwriter, pianist, and civil rights activist, didn't dilute her rage. She sang it raw. Carl Jung didn't just theorize about the unconscious. He descended into it, documenting the process in the Red Book, a journal of images, visions, and dialogues with his inner world. They weren't clean, they weren't safe, but they were real. And in that reality, they found a kind of freedom that touched lives. Because when you integrate your shadow, your art deepens, your relationships deepen, your sense of self becomes less performative and more rooted. You stop asking, "Who do they want me to be?" and start asking, "What truth am I avoiding?" And then, "What if I said it anyway?" This is not about becoming darker. It's about becoming whole. Because if you only live in the light, you cast a very long shadow behind you. And eventually, it will catch up. The integrated man is dangerous, but not destructive. He knows how to channel the fire, not burn in it. He does not project his flaws onto others. He holds them in awareness. He does not pretend to be pure. He walks with paradox. And in that paradox, he becomes trustworthy. Not because he's perfect, but because he's honest. So what does this look like practically? It means speaking what feels risky, kindly but clearly. It means taking responsibility when you act from your wounds. It means resisting the urge to blame others for your discomfort. It means noticing when you're playing a role to earn love and choosing to be real instead. Sometimes that means being disliked. Sometimes it means confronting shame. Sometimes it means realizing that your niceness was just self-betrayal in disguise. But each time you choose truth over image, you pull another thread out of the illusion. Each time you sit with your discomfort instead of fleeing it, you loosen the grip of your unconscious. And eventually, you stop being ruled by the parts of you that once terrified you. Because they are no longer strangers. They are no longer enemies. They are part of your kingdom now. This is the alchemy of integration, taking what was once disowned and making it sacred, taking what was once feared and making it functional, taking what was once unconscious and lighting a candle in the dark. This is how you become sovereign, not by erasing your shadow, but by inhabiting it, with awareness, with discipline, with grace. You become the kind of person who no longer has to hide, who no longer collapses when criticized, who no longer reaches for power through performance, because they have already found it within. And perhaps most importantly, you become capable of loving others as they are, because you've learned to love yourself as you are. You stop needing others to be perfect. You stop fearing their chaos. You stop flinching at complexity, because you've faced your own. And you didn't run. You listened. You endured. You integrated. And in doing so, you became something rare. Not flawless, not finished, but whole. You've been taught to chase the light, to aspire to purity. But the path to real freedom doesn't lie in perfection. It lies in integration. To walk with your shadow is not to glorify the dark, but to recognize it as part of your depth. Your darkness is not your enemy. Your rage, your shame, your jealousy, your fear, these are not signs of your failure. They are fragments of your story, waiting to be reclaimed. Every time you turn toward what you fear in yourself, you reclaim energy once trapped in suppression. Every time you choose truth over image, you realign with authenticity. And every time you integrate a hidden part of you, you become more capable of love, not just toward others, but toward yourself. The shadow will never disappear, but it can become a guide, a companion, a source of creative fire and inner strength. The goal is not to be clean. The goal is to be complete. Because only in wholeness can you finally rest in who you truly are. Thank you for walking this path with me tonight. Until next time, may you turn toward the parts of yourself you feared to face. Walk unafraid into the shadow, because what you meet there is not your downfall, but your becoming.